Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visits the Sumi Oblast, 1 year on after Russia withdrew its troops on the ground, but Moscow continues to shell the region. Greek police arrest 2 men of planning an attack on a Jewish restaurant in central Athens, with the police believing that the threat was imminent. It's the nearest Ukraine's president has been to the border with Russia since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of his country in February 2022. Volodymyr Zelenskyy visited the northeastern Sumi region to mark the anniversary of its recapture from Russian troops. In the early weeks of the conflict, several towns there became the focus of fierce battles. Russian forces, however, are continuing to shell the region. They hit the town of Bilopilia on Tuesday morning, damaging a school building and an apartment block. Meanwhile, there are signs of war damage being repaired. The town of Staryi Saltiv in Ukraine's Kharkiv Oblast bears heavy traces of the war. A small number of civilians in the town are trying to survive among the ruins. On the diplomatic front, Ukraine's foreign minister has taken part in a virtual session in the US-led Summit for Democracy.
No other nation wants peace more than Ukraine, but peace at any cost is an illusion. For peace to be a lasting one, it needs to be just. The cessation of Russia's aggression and the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity are essential conditions for peace.
Russia says it's willing to talk peace, but stresses its security concerns come first.
Я думаю, що ми перші, хто в Україні пішов по новому способу отримати гроші або компенсації від Російської Федерації.
Before the war, Shazara was a Ukrainian company of more than 15,000 employees specializing in space electronics. With almost 6 decades of history, it was an important driver of the local economy in the northern city of Chernihiv.
Свого часу це було, скажімо так, підприємство, вокруг якого організовувалось місто Чернігів. Градообразуючим підприємством було.
Yet months of Russian attacks deeply damaged its production and infrastructure.
Був один окремий день, коли по заводу били зранку і до вечора. Тобто це однозначно була спрямована атака іменно по території заводу.
Now they only have about 300 employees left. They claim their losses run to some 530 million euros. And here comes the biggest question. Where do you get this money from? But they believe they've found a formula.
Росія не погоджується виплачувати не репарації, не погоджується виплачувати збитки. Але є підприємства, держави, концерни, які винні Росії якісь гроші або якісь інші речі. Тому завдяки, що не забороняється міжнародним правом, по договору цесії уступити ці борги. Ці нормальні європейські фірми, держави можуть оплатити нам в счет боргу, який вони винні Росії.
So basically, they want to get the money they say they're owed from Western companies previously doing business with Russia, which cannot pay back debts owed to the country due to sanctions. To do this, Shazara first has to take the case to court in Ukraine and win. Then it has to be recognized in the countries where they want to claim money: Italy, Germany, Poland and France. Experts believe this is actually possible, but there is a big obstacle in the way: state immunity.
There is a general idea that states are equal, and so the courts of one state cannot sit in judgment over another state. That usually means in cases where you sue another country, that country asserts immunity, and that is the end of the lawsuit. Now, immunity is no longer absolute.
Shazara's lawyers will argue Russia is exempt from immunity due to a UN resolution that acknowledges immunity cannot apply when a country grossly violates international guaranteed fundamental freedoms and human rights.
They are not necessarily likely to prevail, but Ukraine has so far been very diligent in plotting out a legal strategy as well. And I wouldn't say from the get-go, there is no chance at all.
Якщо воно не буде, то будемо чекати, як і всі, перемоги України, репарацій, і тоді будемо отримувати вже інше.
Alexei Moskilov enters a Russian courtroom flanked by police to face charges of discrediting Moscow's army on social networks, a case brought after his daughter drew anti-war pictures at school. But there was to be a twist the next day when the court sentenced him to 2 years in prison. A spokesperson announced he'd fled house arrest, to the delight of the applauding audience.
Потому что сегодня ночью он сбежал из-под домашнего ареста.
But he's already been stripped of custody of his daughter Maria, who's in an orphanage.
Дело показательное, и народу нужно показать, что будет с теми людьми, кто не согласен с существующими, так скажем, обстоятельствами, с нашими последними событиями годичными. И показательно в том смысле для родителей, что будет с вашими детьми, если вы не согласны, если вы протестуете.
Maria's written to her father to praise him as a hero. He insists he's against what the Kremlin insists on calling a special military operation. The case has been held up as an example of Russia's crackdown on dissent. The International Olympic Committee has opened the door to Russian athletes returning to competition, but not yet to the 2024 Olympic Games. IOC President Thomas Bach postponed a decision on Russian and Belarusian athletes participating in Paris, but recommended federations let them take part in lesser events.
1. Athletes with a Russian or a Belarusian passport must compete only as individual neutral athletes. 2. Teams of athletes with a Russian or Belarusian passport cannot be considered. 3. Athletes who actively support the war cannot compete. Support personnel who actively support the war cannot be entered.
The prospect of Russians participating in Paris has prompted protests. Polish Deputy Foreign Minister Piotr Wawryk said on Twitter that it was a day of shame. But the Russian Olympic Committee has denounced the IOC's reinsertion criteria as discriminatory.
Two men accused of planning attacks on a Jewish restaurant in central Athens have been arrested. Police in the Greek capital also believe possible attacks on other Jewish targets that could cause multiple civilian casualties had been planned. A third man, who is not in Greece, is also wanted for questioning. As part of their investigation, police searched multiple sites in Athens, as well as in southern Greece and on the western island of Zakynthos. Israel's Mossad spy agency aided the Greek investigation and said in a statement that the two were part of an Iranian terror network. Government and police officials say both detained suspects were of Pakistani origin and entered Greece illegally from neighbouring Turkey. The arrests were made because the alleged attack on the Jewish restaurant was believed to have been imminent.
Despite the war, Russian gas is still running through Ukraine, a paradox that could only stop once the EU will totally cut its dependence on Russian energy. That's according to the chief executive of Ukraine's state energy company Naftogaz, who spoke with Euronews while in Brussels. Brussels has drastically reduced its gas imports from Russia, but some member states from Central and Western Europe still get it through Ukrainian pipelines.
Overall, we should limit any additional income by Russia during the course of war. But from another hand, we should understand that some European countries cannot immediately refuse of using this gas, and we welcome the initiative of European Union to constantly reduce the consumption of Russian gas.
So you're saying it's up to the European member states actually to reject
Absolutely.
this gas coming through Ukraine from Russia?
Absolutely. The customer is European Union countries.
At the same time, Naftogaz CEO says that Ukraine's main goal and biggest challenge is to stop importing gas and become self-sufficient, as well as becoming a net exporter and energy hub for the rest of Europe.
We are planning to produce more gas domestically, and Naftogaz itself, as the biggest energy company in Ukraine, will produce additionally 1 billion of cubic meters of gas. And that might lead to the situation when Ukraine can satisfy its own needs with internal gas production. That is our main goal.
Is it a realistic scenario, you think, to do it next year? And I mean, when the war is still ongoing?
We have no other way. We should produce more. We should consume less, we should be more energy efficient, and we are approaching to it. Ukraine, in the regard of its energy, can become an energy hub for the European Union. We do have the biggest storages of gas in our country, which has 31 billion of cubic meters of capacity, and we plan to use it as for Ukrainian needs as well as for European countries.
The Ukrainian gas chief is also pushing Brussels to make use of Ukraine's underground gas storage facilities and also by providing further security guarantees, as in times of war it is not easy to get investors and insurance.